God's recreation of the new day.
Let us be honest with death. Let us not pretend that it is less than it is. It is separation, it is sorrow, it is grief. But let us neither pretend that death is more than it is. As long as memory endures, and even beyond memory, his influence will be felt. It is not an end to love. Humanity's need for love from each of us is boundless. It is not an end to joy and laughter. Nothing would less honor a vibrant soul than to make our lives drag with excessive grief. Let us be honest with death, for in that honesty we will understand him better and ourselves more deeply. We'll hear now by recorded video from Siamak Adibi.
Good morning and good evening for some of you. Thank you for joining. I'm Siamak Adibi. I'm the son of Dr. Siamak Adibi. I'm proud of many things my father achieved. I'm most proud of his writings and his book. My father published his memoir in 2015 after several years of hard work with the help from my mother. Whenever someone asked about his life or had a question about his background, he would say, "Go read my book." I will forever be grateful that he completed and published his memoir. I would like to read an excerpt from page 39 of my life and the overthrow of the Persian peacock throne. The most famous Persian poets lived between the 10th and 14th centuries. In the West, the most well-known Persian poets are Omar Khayyam and Rumi, but there are others. For example, there is the 10th century poet Ferdowsi, whose poetry revived the pre-Islamic Persian civilization and language. My name, Siamak, and those of my siblings came from his monumental book of poetry called Shahnameh, or the Book of Kings. Siamak was a king who, like King Arthur, was a brave and benevolent king. When I was a teenager in Iran and writing and reading Persian poetry, my favorite poet was Hafez, who lived in the 14th century. Like other people, I would consult him when I was sad because he would have cheerful advice. My father was larger than life, like the poem by Ferdowsi. Thank you, Dad, for all your gifts to the world.
Much has been published about Siamak and by him, describing the story of his life and the values he both espoused and lived by. I didn't have the opportunity to get to know him well, but I'm glad to have spent some time with him, to know him as charming and kind, and to welcome him
There's been such a beautiful breeze these past few days. The wind has been so warm and soft, fragrant and fresh with the spring blossoms. The wind has made me feel Dad is still here. One of my strongest memories of my dad is the summer when I was 13 and I got really into sailing. It was the first time that I was determined to learn something and give it my all. I was taking sailing classes at the Eggertown Yacht Club. I would get up early in the morning to go scrub the bottom of the boat before the races, trying to get my boat to be the fastest. I would even go out racing in nor'easters, one time capsizing and drifting out to sea until I was fortunately rescued by an incoming yacht under power. My dad came to the award ceremony at the end of the summer, and he really hadn't understood just how much I had invested into this sport. When I received the award for the most improved student, my dad cried. This is a story he liked to tell until the end of his life. He was so proud of me. I had learned my determination, my focus, my confidence, and even my bravery from him. He had that ability to go all in. My dad was very nurturing and caring, and one of the ways that he showed his love was to feed me. Whenever I would come visit him, when it came time to leave, he would make me a cheese sandwich on toasted bread with onions, mayonnaise, and sometimes tomatoes. These sandwiches were the best. When I was flying home from LA 2 weeks ago, one of my first thoughts was that I wished I could have a sandwich made by my dad. He loved to feed and care for people. Him and my mother had elaborate dinner parties where every piece of china was used and all the special serving dishes were brought out. The house would be thoroughly cleaned, the classical music would be on, a fire lit, and guests would arrive for 4-course meals and conviviality. I feel like this is something Dad brought with him from Iran. He had an old world code of hospitality. In his last months before quarantine, he would take walks in the neighborhood and suggest to my mom that they stop by neighbors' houses for tea. From 2015 to 2018, I had the privilege to live with my parents. It was not always easy for any of us, but it was one of the biggest gifts of my life. My dad loved having family around. When I moved back to LA, he would always ask me when I was coming back. Dinner was my father's favorite meal. Me and Mom and Dad would have 4-course meals. We would start with cheese and crackers, Dad's happy hour, and then we would have his famous salad, a main dish prepared by my mom, and dessert, usually ice cream, one of Dad's favorite foods. I was in Pittsburgh working on my show at the Frick, and I would sometimes come home late from the studio, but Dad would leave a plate out for me to heat up when I got home. The years that I got to live with my parents were very healing for me, and I think maybe for them too. We got to know each other in a new way as roommates. We also got to share in a process of change together. Dad was changing. He was softening. In those years of living with him, one of his favorite quotes was from Chief Joseph, "I will fight no more." My dad had seen the movie in the 70s, but I had never heard him use the quote before. It had been stored up in him all those years. I got to be there and be a part of the time of his life when he was ready to stop fighting. I saw my dad find a deep sense of peace and joy. He said to me that he had done everything he wanted to do in his life. Whenever I would say, "Dad, what do you want to do?" he would say, "I want to go dancing."
We'll now hear 3 remembrances by recorded video from Mohammed Adibi, Siamak's nephew who lives in Istanbul, then from Tom Pike, Siamak's friend from Chappaquiddick, who filmed the video in Camden, Maine, and from Jim Morris, Siamak's friend from Pittsburgh.
Good day, everyone. My name is Mohammed Hamedi, and today I have been given the honor of speaking few words about our late deceased father and uncle, Dr. Siamak Adibi. In the beginning of the 1960s, a lonely teenage girl. In the beginning of the 1970s, yet another 17-year-old girl And last, in the beginning of the 1980s, a 19-year-old boy all appeared on the doorstep of Siamak and Joan Adibi in Boston and in Pittsburgh. Three siblings from the other side of the world met the open arms of their uncle and aunt. They were raised by the uncle just like his own three children. Not every uncle or any uncle would be so kind, loving, and generous to accept and practically adopt two nieces and a nephew. What we have and who we are as the Hamidi siblings, two sisters and a brother, is due to this man, our beloved uncle Siamak Adibi. We are eternally indebted to him. He was beyond an uncle. He was and will forever live in our hearts and minds as our father. I personally learned from him to be a fighter against life's tough obstacles and to face challenges in all walks of life. Dr. Siamak Adibi will remain in history a pride of his motherland and a pride of his adopted land. His life of compassion, passion, and achievements will be the guiding light for our next generations. May he rest in peace, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Siamak and I have been friends for over 50 years. We met each other on Chappaquiddick Island and became instantaneous friends. We explored all kinds of things on the island together. Siamak and I were interested in bicycling, and we also had a lot of fun on the Roads 19 that Siamak owned in Edgartown Harbor. So that our friendship was made up of a lot of activities that centered on physical motion, because Siamak was such a vital and active man, and our wives were friends. Joan and my wife Lise were both interested in the environment and became involved in improving the quality of the environment of Chappaquiddick Island. And Siamak and I found ourselves at parties together. Siamak loved to go to parties, and so did I. And we enjoyed being with people. And I learned a lot about science from Siamak. So here we were, the distinguished scientist and the retired Episcopal minister, friends on Chappaquiddick Island over many years. And our wives were friends, and our children became friends. And we found ourselves doing activities together. I remember one day when I arrived at the Adibi house, and Siamak asked me if I needed a haircut, and I said yes, I did. And he said, well, let's go to Vineyard Haven together on our bicycles. And sure enough, I had my bicycle with me, and Siamak and I set off for Vineyard Haven on our bicycles. We traveled through the ferry connection to the mainland, as we call it, and down through Edgartown, the traffic in Edgartown, wending our way through the cars and the parking lots and on to the seashore, where we traveled a long distance to Vineyard Haven. And there we got our haircuts together and took our bikes back to Chappaquiddick. It was a typical day with Siamak, full of adventure, full of activity. He loved to experience new things, and he loved to share adventures, and it was so much fun being his friend. He taught me so much about many things. I got to appreciate the rich variety of Persian culture. He was very proud of his Persian heritage. His family had played a distinguished role in the history of Iran in the early days, in poetry and in the military life of the country. And he himself, as a scientist and in medicine, had contributed a great deal to the welfare of the human family. So that being with Siamak was always an adventure. I liked riding my bicycle with him, and I enjoyed very much the times we had talking about various aspects of American life. He was very proud to be an American and talked about what it had meant to him to become a citizen of the United States. But he was also very proud of his Persian heritage. And he did what he could to improve the understanding between the Iranian people and the people of the United States through his writings, in guest editorials, and his books. He was a very active man who was a terrifically good friend to me, and a great citizen of Chappaquiddick Island. If we had ever had an election to elect a mayor of Chappaquiddick, it would have been Siamak Adibi. He was known for his bicycle and for his Roads 19 and his wonderful social presence in the community and its care for people. I remember especially those happy days cruising with him in the Roads 19 in Edgartown Harbor. And I think of him now cruising into the horizon, and with all our love and respect.
Hi, I'm Jim Morris. I was a friend of Siamak's for 40 years. Siamak and Joan lived about 2 blocks from our house, and I played a lot of tennis with Siamak over the years. For the first 20 years, I would always lose to him. Then after I started to get better, I discovered that Siamak hated to lose. So when he would start to lose in a tennis game, he would employ all sorts of psychological tricks to throw me off. He would, first of all, never pick up the balls on his side of the tennis courts, and insist that I pick up all the balls on mine whenever they were on the court. So for the next 10 years, I had a hard time beating him simply because I would get so angry. Anyway, but I think we played tennis, I think, up until his final days of playing tennis, and the final score was Siamak 121, Jim 92. Siamak often acted like a little prince, but that was because he was indeed the youngest child of a family with a bunch of girls. So after hearing about his life in Iran, I understood a good deal more about Siamak. Siamak and Joan have invited us or introduced us to Martha's Vineyard and their wide circle of friends 20 years ago, and we've been going ever since. So in fact, Siamak really blossomed when he was in Martha's Vineyard. For me, he looked like the unofficial mayor of Edgartown. Everybody knew him and he knew everybody, and he enjoyed all of his friends and his activities. He took me sailing and tennis. He took me to the Edgartown Yacht Club many times. In fact, I'm wearing my shirt from the Edgartown Yacht Club, which I was only allowed to purchase on Siamak's say-so. So we have a lot to thank Siamak for, and I'm going to miss him. Siamak was electric, energetic, effervescent, ebullient, and wonderfully eccentric.
We'll hear now from Jennifer Adibi, Siamak's youngest child.
Wow, thank you all for being here with us. We're seeing the numbers creeping up to 200, really incredible. So my father and I were increasingly close towards the end of his life. He gave me very clear instructions on how to live my life. He was not one to refrain from doing so. His advice towards the end required some translation, as he had Alzheimer's disease and his brain was changing. Nonetheless, there was an undeniable process of opening up and letting us experience him in many different ways. For the first time in my 51 years, I can say that I absolutely know what I have to do. he told me a few things, and maybe this is helpful for a lot of us. Number one, to write a book. I would love to do that, might do that someday, I'm not sure. But translation there is to do something in which I absolutely find my voice, speak my truth, and create some momentum around it. Number two, he talked about how I should be an opera singer, or maybe I was already an opera singer. Probably not happening in this lifetime, my kids can attest. The translation there would be to find my voice and turn it into something beautiful to share with others. Number three, he talked a lot about how we must go to Paris, and maybe this pandemic will end and we'll go to Paris. Translation there, travel with him perhaps back in time to 1949, when he had this magical stopover on his journey from Iran to the US. And maybe by doing that, our spirits can connect, and I can connect to him as a younger person, to his origins, and maybe even to his ancestors. And also, he gave me some tips about, I think, now in hindsight, realizing they were related to his agenda on world peace. And he helped me in general navigate conflicts in my life. And a rule of thumb was, when in conflict with somebody, try to gracefully exit, but let them know that you will get back to them. The idea being that we need to keep moving towards peace within ourselves and in our relationships. In this final year, my father watched my marriage end. He certainly did his part in his dignified, kind of old school way to try and turn it around. In the end, he accepted and reassured me that I would be okay, and gave me lots of compliments. Throughout my life, my father did endure some serious hardship and pain, as well as all of his happiness, but he stuck around, and I think he eventually got to the other side of the pain and found some real joy and peace and forgiveness. So I will miss my father incredibly, I already do, but his momentum in life was so strong that there's no doubt he is still here with me, with us, and he will be for a long time.